Welcome back to college football coverage by the fan for the fan. We're here to go over my previews and predictions for week 7, mainly predictions with a little bit of preview. Try to make these quick for these prediction videos. Now, this is a heavy slate, possibly one of the best weekends of college football we will have all year. So let's go ahead and get right into it. First up, we have Auburn at Ole Miss, 11 o'clock. Starts the day on Saturday. We got another big game, Penn State at Michigan, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa State, Minnesota, Illinois. Let's start with Auburn, Ole Miss. Auburn goes to Oxford. Haven't lost there very much, but the thing is, now we're looking at it. Auburn is not a very good football team. Ole Miss is clicking. They got the big win over Kentucky last week. A little bit of scare of Vanderbilt in the first half, but, worked things out. Lane Kiffin came out in that hoodie. Second half, everything went up. The explosive plays with the offense. You got Judkins and Jonathan Mingo, possibly the best wide receiver in the SEC. Some people would say, some people wouldn't agree. But Jackson Dart and Mingo, I think they're going to light it up all over the Auburn defense. Auburn's defense will keep them in it as long as they can. The offense has no pulse. They can't generate any consistency. So I'm going with the Rebs in this one. Ole Miss should have no problem beating Auburn and finally getting a win after the last 6 years. Next, Penn State at Michigan. This is a big game for the Big Ten. This is Penn State's chance to get over that hump in the Franklin era and finally position themselves to kind of control and create a sense of momentum moving forward. I mean, with Penn State, they've kind of flatlined after their good hot starts in the Franklin era. Now for Michigan, though, from their perspective, they've played Maryland. Indiana, people want to say they're tested with that. No, Indiana's not a good football team. They've beat Colorado State, Hawaii. They haven't really played anyone except for Maryland, and Maryland kind of hung with them a little bit last week. I think Michigan may have just been looking forward in the Indiana game to kind of put it on them. I think Penn State comes out hot. They smack Michigan in the mouth a little bit, but Michigan will settle down. I think Michigan is the better team. I wouldn't say both these teams are overrated per se, but they're definitely given higher evaluations than I think they really are. But I think Michigan will win, and both these teams are going to be able to run the ball. You got Singleton and Corum. Corum is a stud. McCarthy really needs to step up this game. Clifford has the experience in these kind of games. McCarthy, he does, but I just think this year favors Clifford. But I believe I heard earlier, it was like 1994 was the last time Penn State won a game on the road against an AP top 5 opponent. So something's got to give eventually. Maybe Penn State gets the win, but I'm going with Michigan to win this game. This is one of my top 10 games. I have Michigan winning this game 35-17. So I'm going with the blue. Next, we got Kansas at Oklahoma. Big game. Dylan Gabriel should be back on the field. Kansas is an underwhelming favorite in this game, surprisingly, which really blows my mind. I get the talent of Oklahoma is there, but that defense has given up so many points, and they haven't generated any. They've had explosive plays, few, but they haven't created any consistent offense. And they've scored here and there, but it was kind of the Kansas State game where we saw some of that elevation. But their defense, if they just keep scoring on you, you can't win games because their offense can't keep up. Kansas is a well-put-together squad. They lost last week, yeah, but it's not like the hype has died down. I mean, you barely lost to TCU, who is undefeated, and they're leading in front of the Big 12 against both these teams. Kansas is the better squad. They have a coach right now who seems to be the better coach. Venables is a defensive guy, and he's looking kind of lost right now with that Oklahoma defense. This is a big game for Oklahoma, though, because if they lose this game, things are going to just get off the tracks for them. It will not be pretty. Next, we got Iowa State at Texas. Not going to say too much about this game. Quinn Ewers, Texas is a whole nother animal. With Ewers, they are a top 10 team in my opinion, but they got to get that resume back up for the AP voters to put them in there. But I think come college football playoff rankings time, and Texas keeps winning. I mean, if they win this week, we got a showdown of them and Oklahoma State next week, but they should be able to handle business. You got Xavier Worthy, Bijan Robinson, and Quinn Ewers, three-headed monster. They'll handle the Cyclones easily. Next, Minnesota and Illinois, one of our top 10 games, or my top 10 games. I got Minnesota winning this one 31-24. Now, this is a Big Ten West game. Big Ten West is kind of looked down upon nationally, but this year I would say it's stronger than it has been, even though Wisconsin is down. I mean, you got teams like Illinois and Minnesota and Purdue's picking back up who are actually putting a good product on the field and winning games that they don't normally win. So this game is big for determining the West, and I think Minnesota comes back on top, I believe, Ibrahim comes back for this game. He missed the Purdue game that they lost, and I think if they had him, they would have won that game. But give me the Golden Gophers taking down the Illini in Champaign. However, Illinois can still have a good game. Chase Brown is a stud. DeVito has improved a lot. His completion percentage is not that bad. He's just got to get those touchdowns up. But that also comes with having Chase Brown, who's a very underrated running back in the backfield. That'll be a good game to watch, though. Keep that game on your radar in the 11 o'clock slate. There's other good games, but pay attention to that one. Now we move down. Miami, Virginia Tech. Not going to cover this one too much. It is in Blacksburg. Miami needs a win. You got to get a win. You lost to North Carolina last week. You just keep losing. ACC game, you're 0-1 in the ACC. Technically, you still have the ACC season in front of you. Didn't get off to the start you wanted to. Van Dyke looks a lot different in this Cristobal offense, and I just think he needs time to get his whole system together, and some of these guys that are there aren't really built for that. But he's also getting slapped around like a rag doll coaching-wise, which isn't the greatest, but I think Virginia Tech actually wins this one in Blacksburg, even though they're not that great of a football team. I think the home field advantage will play to their factor, and Miami just gives up the big plays, even though Virginia Tech's not that great. I could see Smith for Virginia Tech having a few big catches. Give me the Hokies. Georgia, Vandy. This isn't a big game to fawn over. Obviously, Georgia's going to win. Let's not blink at it. But I just want to see how Vandy plays against Georgia, because they're 3-3. I mean, for Vanderbilt, that's good. They've played a few bad teams, but last week they had Ole Miss on the ropes for a little bit. I want to see how they do against this kind of competition. Let's see that improvement in the Clark Lea era. And I just think it's going to be fun to see how they do, because honestly, Vanderbilt probably has the best quarterback that Georgia has played so far, so it's going to be fun to see how that plays out. Next, we got the third Saturday in October. Obviously, my top game. I got Tennessee winning this one 38-35 before I get into that, or when I get into that. I have that with Bryce Young playing. We don't know for sure if he's going to play. He's probably going to play. The reason I have it at that is because Bama has an impressive rush offense, obviously, but Tennessee ranks top 10 nationally in rush defense. And if Bryce Young is not 100%, they can keep up with that Bama rush, and Hendon Hooker and that offense is going to score points. He may finally have his first turnover this weekend, which I think he will. It'll be interesting to see how he overcomes that adversity in this season, how that offense shakes that off. But I think Tennessee can win this game, and if Milroe plays, I believe more turnovers will happen, which is what kept Texas A&M in the game last week. Most of their points came off turnovers. If that's the case, it could be by more. I'm not blinking at Alabama or trying to underplay them. I know Tennessee's the hot favorite to pick here, even though they're not the favorite in the game. But it just seems like they're playing their best ball right now. And Alabama doesn't seem to be playing their best ball, along with questions at quarterback, whether he's 100% even if he plays. So I'm going with the Vols. Next, we got Oklahoma State TCU, our second game. I got TCU 27-21. I am not betting against Max Duggan, or Dugan, however you choose to say it. That offense is so much fun to watch under Sonny Dykes. He's got the Horned Frogs rolling. Yes, I know Oklahoma State's undefeated as well, but they had that win against the Baylor game, but I think Baylor has regressed this year. I don't think it's as impressive as a win as people think. They also came off that bye week. TCU is rolling, and that offense will be able to generate points. I have it at 27-21, a little low scoring, because I think both teams are going to shake each other out early, and the first half is going to be kind of slow. Give me the Horned Frogs to win that game. Next, North Carolina State at Syracuse. This is in the not the Carrier Dome anymore, sadly, the JMA Wireless Dome. Now, Devin Leary has not played to his name this year at all compared to what he was last season. The defense is still good, but I don't want to bet against Sean Tucker in the Carrier Dome. They win games there. They win close games. They beat Purdue at home, and then they barely beat a really bad Virginia team, but they win these games. I have Syracuse winning 24-17. They win these low-scoring games. I think their kicking game, along with their red zone offense, will give them the edge in this game, especially if they can shake Leary early. And I think the crowd's going to bring it. I mean, if Syracuse wins this game, you can realistically start talking about, could the Orange have conference championship aspirations? So that's going to be fun to watch. Next, Arkansas at BYU. This would have been a top 10 game looking at it from the preseason, but Arkansas's tapered off. KJ Jefferson obviously didn't play against Mississippi State last week, which honestly, I don't think it would have mattered. They were going to lose that game. BYU lost to Notre Dame. I want to see how they respond after that loss. Yes, it's their second loss, but They've kind of been a little bit shaky, but you're back at home. You got an SEC opponent coming. You want to make a statement. You got a great rest of the season to make a case for a New Year's Six bowl game, most likely. And I think Hall is the best player on that football field, regardless of team. And their line and their D-line are built to play against bigger teams like this. They matched up against Baylor. They can match up against Arkansas, and Arkansas's D-line is not a strength. Expect BYU to put up points. Give me the Cougars to win that game. Next, Maryland at Indiana. Give me Tagovailoa throwing all over the Hoosiers. Give me Maryland to win that game, no problem. Indiana is just not that great of a team this year. James Madison, Georgia Southern. I have this as a top 10 game simply because James Madison is undefeated. They're the little engine that could so far this year. Coming up from FCS here in the FBS, they're undefeated in the Sun Belt. They are undefeated. They're going to Statesboro, Georgia, to play Georgia Southern, who beat Nebraska earlier in the year. They did lose back-to-back games. They lost to Coastal Carolina at Coastal, then they lost to Georgia State at Georgia State. Georgia State is 2-4, but they've lost 3 games to FBS opponent or Power 5 opponents like North Carolina, South Carolina, who are good teams, and they had those teams on the ropes. They almost beat South Carolina if it weren't for some punts, and North Carolina got away from them. But those aren't bad losses. They're better than their record shows for their level of competition. James Madison, they have the App State win, but besides that, nothing impressive. App State blew that game more than anything. Still props to the Dukes for winning that game, but I think this is a reality check here. Van Treese, I think he will have a step-up game. He's almost at 2,000 yards already for Georgia Southern. Give me Georgia Southern to win this game with Clay Helton. We'll have them ready. Next, we got Wisconsin and Michigan State. We got the mid-bowl of the Big Ten. Both teams desperately needing a win. Michigan State, Mel Tucker, no one's really asking questions. Obviously, the big contract from last year, but things just look ugly, man. I mean, last year, he utilized the portal so well. Kenneth Walker obviously was a huge part of that offense. But this game, I think Wisconsin wins this game, no problem. Feed Allen. Mertz should be able to have a good game with how bad Michigan State's secondary is. Give me Wisconsin to win that game. Next, a game that's definitely under the radar that no one's probably going to watch, so I don't know why I'm talking about it. But Tulane at South Florida, 5-1, 2-0 in the American. Tulane at 1-5, 0-2 South Florida. Why am I bringing this game up? South Florida went to Ben Hill Griffith, almost beat Florida. They went to Cincinnati last week, almost beat them. They also got blown out by Louisville, and they got blown out by BYU. However, as of recently, they've been playing to the level of their competition, and this could be a sleeper catch for South Florida playing Tulane. Tulane better bring their A game going on the road in Tampa. They have the talent to win this game, far and none, but South Florida is a dangerous team to play even though they're 1-5. Could just be a fun game to keep your eye on if you want to look for smaller games like that. Next, we got Arizona at Washington. Washington's been smacked in the face with reality. They weren't as good as the media was hyping them up to be. Yes, they are 4-2, turning around from last year, but you gotta wake up here. Arizona is improved. They're a team that could come in and beat you. Ultimately, I think Washington wins, but this game could be close. Next, we have LSU at Florida. This game was interesting. You got first-year head coaches, Brian Kelly, and I just went brain dead on Florida's head coach, Billy Napier. And you got these two teams solely rely on their quarterback playing. I mean, last week Florida didn't look too great against Missouri, but I do think Missouri's improving week by week, as we've seen with their Auburn, Georgia, and Florida games. Haven't won one, but they've gotten close. Aside from that, that's in favor of Florida. I think Missouri is a little bit better. LSU played the best team they've played all year, got smacked in the mouth. But I think it's Daniels, Richardson, whoever plays the best wins this game, and I'm giving it to Florida simply because they're in Gainesville. Next, Clemson at Florida State, one of our top 10 games. The line's 3.5, Clemson. That's weird to me. I just think the media is waiting for, or the odds makers are waiting for this Clemson slip up, and I just don't see it happening. They're improving week by week. They are slowly getting better. They've beaten 2 of the better teams, if not the 2 better teams in their conference division, and they're getting better each week with Uyunglele living up to somewhat of the hype. I got Clemson winning 35-14. I just don't think Florida State can keep up, and I want to see how they rebound after that loss. It is at home for them in Doak Campbell, which can get rowdy, and I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Florida State is improving, but I don't think this is the weekend they down the Tigers. Next, Mississippi State at Kentucky. Well, this is one of my top 10 games. I got Mississippi State winning 41-27. Give me Will Rogers throwing all over Kentucky. I mean, this offense just puts up points. Leach is getting this thing rolling. They had that slip up to LSU earlier in the year, which I think actually benefited them. Obviously, looking back at it, you don't want to lose, but they shouldn't have lost that game. and they did. But now they're playing with an insane sense of urgency, and this offense is clicking. Give me the Bulldogs. Nebraska at Purdue. Purdue should be able to win this game. Aiden O'Connell is a stud. They're getting things together. Jones is about to hit 700 yards, I believe, for Purdue. Their wide receiver, he's got like 7 or 8 touchdowns on the year. Give me Purdue, another team to keep an eye out on in the Big Ten West. Next, USC at Utah. This is the time for Utah and Lincoln Riley to prove to me that they're legit. Yes, they're 6-0 and 4-0 in the Pac-12, but to me that doesn't mean much so far with their wins. Utah is 4-2, but this is the defending champion. You're going to their house, not an easy place to play. It's hard to go against Utah. I got Utah winning 42-38. It's going to be closer, but I think this is when reality kind of sets in of physicality of play for USC. So it'll be interesting. I just want to see how Caleb Williams handles this defense and see how well if Utah actually adjusts to zone instead of playing man against USC. Next, we got North Carolina against Duke. I got UNC winning 35-24. I have this as a top 10 game. You're like, North Carolina, Duke. Why? This is football. Duke's 4-2. I mean, North Carolina's 5-1. Duke's 4-2. This is the best this game's looked in a long time, especially since I've been alive. So I think it'll be fun. And it's in Durham. I'm sure this could be one of their best crowds they've had in a long time. It'll be fun to see them play, but I think Drake May ultimately gets a stud. I mean, ultimately, he's going to lead them to victory. I just don't think Duke's offense can keep up. North Carolina will give up points, but North Carolina will score more points, obviously. Washington State at Oregon State. This is the week where both these teams really need to rebound. You had Washington State losing to USC. You had Oregon State escaping Stanford. They've both had these close chances at winning. Oregon State almost beating USC. Washington State almost beating Oregon. You're like, oh, I want to get to that next step. Here's this game to get to that next step. Position yourself for good bowl eligibility. Get right next to bowl eligibility and position yourself for a good bowl game. Take the steps, improve your program. For Oregon State, I'd say this win is needed more in terms of Washington State already looks more improved where they're happy with it, not content. But Oregon State kind of has looked a little lackluster since they lost that USC game. I need that level of playback from the Beavers. I know it's there. They're a good team, but they've just been kind of down recently. So for them, hopefully they can win. I'm actually going to take Washington State on the road to win that game. And that's all the games we are going to cover this week. Yes, I've missed some of the smaller games, but ultimately, I don't want to keep this going for too long. Thank you for listening. If this is the kind of content you like and enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And let's get ready for a good weekend of college football.